Hello and welcome to this new Blender tutorial on how we can use the object info node and some node trickery to get random colors for our different objects using only one shader. So what I have here is just a very basic scene with multiple cubes that all use this simple material that we're gonna edit now. So the most common way of getting random colors is probably to use the hue saturation node, and set this maybe to red. And now we use the object info node, and this random output here gives us values between 0 and 1 for each of the cubes it's applied to. And if we connect this random value to, for example, a hue value in this node, we get a different hue for each of these cubes. If we want to control the saturation or the value with this random node, we can also do it. Just connect it to a saturation or value. The only problem with this method is if we want to control multiple inputs with it, it's gonna use the same value for each of this. For example, this cube here, which is circa 0.5, I guess, in the random output, it's gonna use 0.5 for hue, 0.5 for saturation, and 0.5 for value. But this is not what we want. We want like 0.2 for hue, 0.5 for saturation, and 0.7 for value, for example. So it should be random for each of these inputs. So one method I found out we can use is to use the wave texture, which gives us this gradients from 0 to 1. This is also the reason why we use this texture, not the noise texture, for example, because noise texture, the values reach not from 0 to 1, but from like 0.25 to 0.75. But we want to be the values between 0 and 1. So we connect the random output of this object info node to the vector input of the wave texture. Usually this is not what you want to do, but in this case it works. And now with the scale, we can control like the seed of this random pattern we get with this. So if we want to have a different pattern for each of this hue saturation value inputs, we just use 3 different wave textures and connect the random node to each of these textures. And now we just set a different scale for each of these nodes. And yeah, now we can connect the vector output of these nodes to the hue saturation value node. And we now have a more random pattern than we would have had if we just connected the random output to each of these inputs. So if you want to control now each value individually, we can also duplicate this node, button, duplicate it, and plug the saturation input to this one and the value input to this one. And now using the vector values under these nodes, we can control it for each property individually. So just to show the difference again, for example, this pattern couldn't be achieved using only the random input, because when we connect it like that, it's very ugly, because it again uses the same value for saturation and value, which is not what we want. So we're gonna connect this one again. And now we can connect this to a node group with Ctrl G, and we plug in the color to the group input, also the vector of the first node, and the vector for the saturation and the vector for the value. Rename these vectors hue saturation value. And now we have this very elegant node to control each value individually. Maybe we call it color variation. And we can now also use this with textures in other projects, for example. If I add an image texture, for example, this one from Pixar, with Control G and the Node Wrangler add-on, we can add a mapping and texture coordinate nodes, and we connect it here, and it's UV, they are not unwrapped, so I'm gonna use generated. It's a bit too small, at a 2.2, and yeah, now we can control use saturation value for this texture for each object individually. So I think the most common way where we're gonna use this is, for example, if we want to create plants. If we have a forest, we want every tree to be a different shade of green. And we don't want to create a different material for each shade of green. For example, we can set this to this green, maybe a bit darker. Oh, that's the one polar, sorry. This green, and now the hue should be kind of low, I guess. And the saturation like this, and the value like this. And now we have different shades of green using only one material. So I hope you found this tutorial useful, and have a nice day.